The breaking point, the last peaceful. Music morning, the colony of Meridian. 7 had always been a symbol of human hope. Among the stars, nestled on a planet, with violet skies and twin suns, it housed nearly 50,000 civilians who came, seeking a fresh start far from Earth's crowded cities. Dr. Sarah Chin stood on the observation deck that morning, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. She held a warm cup of coffee, reviewing her research notes on the planet's unique plant life. Everything felt normal. Everything felt safe. The Caloran Empire had been watching humanity for decades. Their reptilian species had conquered 12 star systems and considered themselves the rightful rulers of this region of space. Humans were newcomers barely a century into space exploration, and the Calarians saw them as irritating insects, spreading where they did not belong. For years they issued warnings. They demanded humans abandon their outer colonies. Earth's diplomatic corps tried negotiation, offering trade agreements and territorial compromises, but the Keelians did not want compromise. They wanted submission. The sky burns. Sarah's peaceful morning shattered when the sky turned red. Massive warships appeared without warning, dropping out of faster than light traveled directly above the colony. Their hulls were dark and covered with sharp angles that seemed designed to inspire fear. Before anyone could react, before any alarm could sound, the first plasma bombardment began. The communications tower exploded in a ball of fire. The main power station collapsed as energy beams cut through it like paper. Buildings that housed family, schools, and medical centers were targeted with cold precision. Sarah dropped her coffee cup and ran the observation decks. Windows cracked as shock waves rolled across the colony. She heard screaming behind her as people scrambled for shelter that did not exist. Calarians were not interested in occupation. They were sending a message written in fire and blood. As Sarah sprinted through the corridors, explosions chased her steps. The walls shook and lights flickered before dying completely. Emergency lighting cast everything in a hellish red glow. No mercy given. The attack lasted only 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. Sarah made it to an emergency bunker beneath the research facility where she worked. 43 other people crowded inside, their faces pale with terror. Through the thick walls they could hear the destruction above, the rumbling, the explosions, the awful silence that followed each blast. When it finally stopped, nobody moved. Nobody wanted to be the first to open the door and see what remained. Sarah volunteered. Her hands trembled as she entered the access code, and the heavy door slid open. The sight that greeted her would haunt her forever. Meridian 7 was gone. Buildings were reduced to rubble. Fires burned everywhere, sending black smoke into the violet sky. Bodies lay in the streets. The Calarians had not bothered to land troops. They simply destroyed everything from orbit and left. Sarah fell to her knees, unable to process the scale of the horror. This was not war. This was extermination. The message travels. Single communication satellite survived the attack, hidden on the far side of the planet. Sarah and the other survivors worked frantically to repair a transmitter and send a distress signal to Earth. It took 6 hours of desperate work with damaged equipment and limited power. When they finally established a connection, Sarah recorded a message that would change everything. Her voice was steady despite the tears on her face. She described the attack in clinical detail. She showed the camera the ruins around her. She named the Catherians as the attackers and made one simple request: remember us. The signal traveled across space at light speed, taking 3 days to reach Earth. When it arrived at the Sol System Defense Network Automated Systems flagged it as Priority 1. Within an hour it reached the United Earth Council chambers. Admiral Marcus Webb sat in the emergency session, watching Sarah's message on the main display. The room filled with representatives from every nation and major colony fell into stunned silence. Some covered their mouths in shock, others clenched their fists in rage. When the recording ended, nobody spoke for a full minute. The Galaxy Shrugs, Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, immediately filed a formal complaint and demanded justice. The Council, a gathering of 15 different alien species who claimed to maintain peace in this region of space, held a special session to address the incident. Earth's representatives presented evidence, showed the recordings, and demanded the Calthurians be held accountable. The response was disappointing but not surprising. The Council expressed regret for the loss of life, but stated that Meridian 7 was located in disputed territory. They suggested that humans should have been more cautious about expanding into regions claimed by established powers. The Kelthuran ambassador, a tall, reptilian creature with golden scales and cold yellow eyes, stood before the Council with barely concealed contempt. He stated that his empire had given humans adequate warning. The attack was justified response to human aggression. In expanding into Calthuran space, he suggested that Earth should withdraw from all outer colonies to prevent further incidents. Some Council members nodded in agreement. The message was clear: humanity was too young, too weak, and too insignificant to matter. The galaxy operated on the principle of strength, and humans had none. Silent fury, Admiral Webb returned to Earth. With the Council's decision, he walked into a meeting with the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the President with a look of cold determination. The room expected him to report diplomatic progress. Instead, he played the recording of the Council session where alien representatives discussed humanity as if humans were children who needed to learn their place. The President, a woman who had spent her entire career advocating for peaceful exploration, listened to every word. When it finished, she asked a single question: "Are we ready?" Webb nodded. Project Sentinel had been running for 15 years in absolute secrecy after humanity's first contact with aggressive alien species decades ago. A small group of military leaders and scientists convinced the government to prepare for the worst. They argued that hoping for peace was not the same as being ready for war. The project consumed enormous resources and required cooperation across all of Earth's nation. Massive construction facilities were built on the dark side of the moon, on Mars, and in the asteroid belt. Thousands of the brightest minds worked on technologies that would give humanity a fighting chance. The hidden strength deep beneath the lunar surface in a facility that officially did not exist. Rows of warships waited in darkness. They were not like the civilian vessels that carried colonists to distant worlds. These ships were built with one purpose: to ensure humanity's survival against any threat. Their designs incorporated technology that Earth had, developed in secret, studying captured alien equipment and pushing human engineering to its absolute limits. Fusion reactors that could power cities, ran their engines, rail guns that could fire projectiles at relativistic speeds, lined their holes, point defense systems that could track and destroy thousands of targets simultaneously protected. Their armor, the Sentinel fleet, consisted of 150 warships divided into 3 battle groups. Earth had built them slowly and quietly, never testing them in space where alien observers might notice. The crews trained in simulators so realistic that they might as well have been flying real missions. Pilots practiced maneuvers until they could execute them perfectly in their sleep. Gunners memorized the weak points of every known alien ship design. Marines drilled for boarding actions against species they had never fought. Everyone knew that if the Sentinel fleet ever launched, it meant humanity had been pushed too far. The world unites. News of Meridian 7 spread across Earth within hours. Despite government attempts to control the information, people took to the streets not in panic but in rage. The images of the destroyed colony played on every screen. Sarah Chen's message became the most watched recording in human history. Citizens demanded action. They demanded that their leaders stop trying to be diplomatic with species that saw humans as inferior. Politicians who had always opposed military spending suddenly found themselves supporting emergency war measure. Something fundamental changed in humanity that day. For a century, humans had approached the galaxy with optimism and hope. They believed that peaceful coexistence was possible with any intelligent species. They thought that diplomacy and understanding could solve any conflict. Meridian 7 burned those illusions away. Humans realized that the galaxy was not the enlightened community they had imagined. It was a place where strength determined survival and weakness invited destruction. Earth would not make the mistake of being weak again. Admiral Webb stood before the Sentinel Fleet command staff in the lunar facility. Officers from dozens of nations filled the briefing room, their uniforms representing humanity's unity. Webb looked at each of them and spoke words that would define the coming conflict. The Calthurians think we are soft. The Council thinks we are insignificant. They are about to learn what happens when you push humanity too far. Prepare the fleet for launch. Show them what Earth can do. The awakening. The Caloran advance. 3 weeks after the destruction of Meridian 7, the Caloran Empire launched what they believed would be their final solution to the human problem. Their grand fleet, consisting of over 300 warships, entered human space with overwhelming confidence. They had studied Earth's known military capabilities and found them laughable. Human vessels were slow, lightly armed, and few in number. The Calarians expected complete victory within days. Their target was the Titan Station, humanity's largest military outpost, orbiting Saturn's moon. Destroying it would leave Earth's outer colonies defenseless and force humanity to accept Ketharan terms. Commander Zhu stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vengeance of Empire, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. His scales gleamed under the command sense lights as he addressed his officers. Humans are a disease that must be purged from our territory. Today we cure this infection permanently. His crew responded with ceremonial hisses of Approval, the fleet dropped out of. Faster than light travel at the edge of Saturn's orbit, their sensors immediately detecting Titan station. Ahead, Zhu expected to see human ships scrambling to defend their base. Instead, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The Sentinel rises. Space around Titan station erupted with light as hundreds of human vessels emerged from stealth positions they had held for weeks. The Sentinel fleet had been waiting, hidden by technology the Keelians did not know existed. Admiral Webb sat in the command center of the flagship Indomitable, watching his tactical display light up with enemy contact. His face showed no emotion as he gave the order humanity had been preparing to give for 15 years. All ships break stealth, show them what we built, lock weapons and prepare to engage. On my mark, the Calthurian sensors suddenly registered vessel after vessel appearing where moments before there had been empty space. Zhu stared at his display in disbelief. Where did these ships come from? How many do they have? His tactical officer's voice cracked with uncertainty as he reported. The numbers, sir. I count 150 human warships. Their energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. They are powering weapon systems that rival our own dreadnoughts. Joe felt something he had not experienced in decades of military service: fear, first blood. Admiral Webb did not believe in long speeches before battle. He simply said 2 words: fire everything. The Sentinel fleet opened fire simultaneously, and space became a storm of destruction. Railgun projectiles accelerated to incredible velocities, tore through Ketharan shields that were designed to stop energy weapons. Missile salvos, numbering in the thousands, overwhelmed enemy point defenses. Laser arrays that could cut through starship armor like butter carved deadly patterns across the Calaran formation. The humans had studied every battle the Calarians ever fought and designed weapons specifically to counter their tactics. The Kelthuran front line disintegrated in the first 30 seconds. 15 heavy cruisers exploded as railgun rounds pierced their reactors. 20 destroyers broke apart under sustained laser fire. Fighter craft launched from Kelthuran carriers found themselves facing automated defense drones that moved faster and shot more accurately than any living pilot. Commander Zhu watched in horror as his fleet's perfect formation collapsed into chaos. His ships tried to return fire, but the human vessels moved with unexpected speed and precision. They fought like they had been preparing for this exact battle for years because they had the scientists' revenge. Dr. Sarah Chin was aboard the Indomitable, not as a soldier but as an observer, representing the survivors of Meridian 7. Admiral Webb had offered her position on the bridge so she could witness humanity's response to the massacre. She stood at a secondary console watching the battle unfold on multiple displays. Each Ketharan ship that exploded felt like a small piece of justice for the 50,000 people who died on her colony. But Sarah felt no satisfaction, only a cold emptiness, where her hope for a peaceful galaxy used to live. A young communications officer noticed Sarah standing alone and approached her carefully. Dr. Chin, I wanted you to know that my sister was on Meridian 7. She taught at the elementary school there. Sarah turned to look at him, seeing the pain in his eyes that matched her own. I am sorry for your loss, she said quietly. The officer nodded and gestured at the main display. Where Calthuran ships burned, this is. For them, for everyone we lost for. Showing the galaxy that humanity will not disappear quietly. Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. Make sure they never forget what happens when they attack us. The turning point, Commander. Zhu realized his fleet was being systematically destroyed. The humans were not just defending, they were executing a carefully planned counter-offensive that targeted his command structure with brutal efficiency. His flagship shuddered as multiple impacts struck the shields. Warning alarms filled the bridge. His tactical officer shouted over the chaos, "Sir, we have lost 40% of our fleet. Their weapons are too advanced. We cannot win this engagement." Zha's pride warred with his survival instinct. Retreating would mean disgrace, but staying meant death. Admiral Webb watched the Calthuran formation begin to break apart as individual ships attempted to flee. His tactical officer requested orders. "Should we pursue, sir?" Webb considered for a moment, then shook his head. "Let some of them escape. I want them to report what they saw here. I want every species in the galaxy to know what happened when the Calarians pushed humanity too far." The Sentinel fleet ceased fire as the surviving Calaran vessels jumped to faster than light speed, running for their lives. Of the 300 ships that entered the battle, only 74 escaped. The rest floated as debris. In Saturn's orbit, the galaxy watches. News of the Battle of Titan's Gate spread across the galactic community. With hours, the Calthuran Empire, which had seemed invincible for centuries, had been utterly defeated by the species they considered primitive. Ambassadors from dozens of worlds flooded the Galactic Council chambers, demanding explanations. How did humanity build such a fleet in secret? What other weapons did they possess? The Council members, who had dismissed Earth's complaints about Meridian 7, now found themselves scrambling to reassess their positions. The humans were not the weak newcomers everyone assumed. The Calarian High Command held an emergency session in their capital world. Commander Zhu, stripped of his rank and facing execution for his failure, stood before the Supreme Executor. The reptilian leader eyes burned with rage as Zhu described the battle in detail. "You tell me that humans possess weapons equal to our own, that their fleet destroyed ours with ease. How is this possible?" Zhu kept his head lowered. "They were prepared, Supreme Executive. They knew exactly how we would attack. They planned this for years. Someone advised them well." The Supreme Executive slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Then we will crush them with overwhelming force. Assemble every ship we have." Earth's ultimatum. Admiral Webb appeared before the Galactic Council via holographic transmission. The alien representatives, who had once looked at humanity with contempt, now watched him with wary respect. He stood in his dress uniform, every medal earned through decades of service displayed on his chest. Behind him, a tactical display showed the wreckage of the Calthurian fleet at Titan's Gate. His voice was calm but carried absolute authority as he addressed the council. "For too long, this council has allowed aggressive empires to prey on peaceful species without consequence. You stood by while the Calarians murdered 50,000 human civilians. You called it a territorial dispute." Webb continued, his eyes moving across each council member. "Earth has shown restraint for a century. We came To the stars seeking friendship and cooperation, we offered peace to species that saw our kindness as weakness. That ends today. Humanity will no longer accept being treated as inferior. We have the strength to defend ourselves and our allies. Any species that attacks human citizens will face the full might of Earth's military. We do not seek war, but we will no longer tolerate aggression without response. The council chamber remained silent. Several ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone knew it. The price of arrogance. The supreme executive of the Calarian Empire refused to accept defeat. He assembled a new fleet, even larger than the first, and prepared to launch a direct assault on Earth itself. His military advisors warned him that humanity clearly possessed advanced technology and superior tactics. They suggested negotiation instead of further conflict. The supreme executive executed 2 advisors for cowardice and ordered the fleet to launch immediately. He would not allow a species of mammals to humiliate his empire. The Calarians would show the galaxy that their power remained absolute. The second Calaran fleet never reached Earth. The Sentinel fleet, now reinforced with additional warships that had completed construction, intercepted them near Jupiter. This time Admiral Webb authorized the use of humanity's most devastating weapons, experimental plasma lances that could burn through a ship's hull in seconds, gravitational disruptors that could tear vessels apart by creating localized gravity wells, quantum missiles that phase through shields before detonating inside enemy reactors. The battle lasted 15 minutes. Not a single Calaran ship survived. Supreme Executive's flagship was the last to die, its distress signals broadcasting his final screams across all channels. A new order. Dr. Sarah Chin stood before the rebuilt colony of Meridian 7. 6 months after the battles ended, the reconstruction had been rapid, funded by reparations the Caltharan Empire paid as part of their surrender agreement. New buildings rose where ruins once stood. Families returned to reclaim their homes. Children played in streets that had been soaked with blood. Sarah felt tears on her face as she watched the colony come back to life. This was what humanity fought for, not revenge but the right to exist peacefully among the stars without fear. The Galactic Council underwent major reforms following Earth's demonstration of military power. Several aggressive empires that had terrorized weaker species suddenly found themselves facing consequences for their actions. Humanity, once dismissed as insignificant, now sat on the Council's Security Committee. Admiral Webb became Earth's permanent military representative, ensuring that no species would ever again attack humans without facing overwhelming retaliation. Other peaceful species, inspired by humanity's stand, began forming defensive alliances. The galaxy was changing, shaped by the lesson that pushing any species too far came with a terrible price. The Sentinel's watch. Admiral Webb walked through the Sentinel fleet lunar facility, inspecting the new warships under construction. Earth had not stopped building after the Calaran surrender. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and humanity would maintain the strength to protect itself. Young officers saluted as he passed, their faces showing the pride of serving in the fleet that saved their species. Webb paused at an observation window overlooking the construction bay. Hundreds of workers moved like ants. Across massive starship frames, each vessel represented humanity's determination to never again be vulnerable. Sarah Chin joined him at the window, having accepted a position as the civilian oversight director for the Sentinel project. She stood beside the Admiral in comfortable silence, both watching the ships take shape. You know, Sarah said quietly, I used to believe that showing weakness would inspire compassion, that if we proved we meant no harm, others would treat us with kindness. Webb nodded slowly, and now Sarah's reflection in the window showed a harder expression than she had worn before Meridian 7. Now I know that peace requires strength. Kindness without the ability to defend it is just an invitation for predators. The message sent across the galaxy, species that once dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers now studied Earth with cautious respect. Militarim's analyzed the Battle of Titan's Gate, trying to understand how humans developed such advanced technology in secret. Diplomatic Corps rewrote their protocols for dealing with Earth representatives. Trade agreements that once favored alien interests were renegotiated on equal terms. Humanity had sent a clear message, written in the wreckage of Caloran warships: we came in peace, but we are prepared for war. Push us too far and you will face a fury that shatters all expectations. The Keltheran Empire, once proud and aggressive, became a cautionary tale. Their territory was reduced, their military was restricted. Their supreme executive throne sat empty, abolished as part of their surrender. Young Calthians grew up learning about the disastrous decision to attack humanity. Their history books marked the Meridian 7 massacre as the moment their empire's decline began. Some Calthurian scholars wrote that humanity's response was disproportionate. Others argued that their own leaders' arrogance brought destruction upon themselves. All agreed on one fact: the humans had been pushed too far, and the galaxy would never forget what happened next. The future awaits. Earth City celebrated as news of lasting peace reached every corner of the planet. Humans no longer feared that their colonies would be attacked without consequence. Parents no longer worried that their children living on distant worlds might face the same fate as Meridian 7. Admiral Webb stood on a stage in front of millions, accepting a medal for his service. But he kept his speech short, deflecting credit to the thousands of scientists, engineers, and soldiers who made the Sentinel fleet possible. He ended with words that captured humanity's new position in the galaxy. We did not seek this conflict. We did not want to prove our strength through violence, but when forced to choose between submission and survival, humanity will always choose to stand and fight. We extend our hand in friendship to all peaceful species. We offer cooperation, trade, and mutual respect, but to those who see our kindness as weakness, remember this: Earth protects its own always. The crowd erupted in applause that echoed across the planet. Humanity had learned a harsh lesson about the galaxy's true nature, but they had also discovered their own strength. The aliens pushed them too far, and Earth's response shattered every expectation. The age of humanity being dismissed as insignificant was over. A new era had begun. The end.